All right. Good morning, everyone. It is Office Hours Early Edition, and I have my mentor, Blaine Bartlett. Learn BlaineBartlett.com/LMM. We got to put his logo up there, Matty Matt. What's going on? We got to promote my favorite mentor. Boom! There it is, the Mindset Mastermind. So, I have Mike Mamula, one of my business partners in Media Abundance, and he's here. We're in Syracuse, about to utilize the No Bull Conference. That's why we're early. So anyone wants to join us, we got myself, Gary V, Shay Roddenbottom. I'm not sure, but Gary and I are live. Everyone else, I think, is virtual. So anyway, join us. We'd love to have you. We got a great day planned. Blaine, I'm taking this opportunity with us three here. I have a question for you.
Go.
So with time, which is one of our favorite subjects to speak about, when we live in this time frame, how do we reconcile the ability for someone like Elon Musk, Branson, these extraordinary people that can do so much with time in the same amount of time as other people? Most people can't reconcile that. Do you feel they actually can bend time, or are they using a different time frame? And let me give you the one statement that set me off on this side, that there's two ways, and this is what this guru told me, right? Two ways to live a long life. One is to be miserable, and the other is to be productive.
Yep.
Both ways you live a long life. So how do we reconcile that? Because if I can figure out how to explain that to people, and you can do it, I'm telling you, there's a quantitative value that's far beyond anything else that we could teach people.
People that live a miserable life are unfocused. They're scattered. Their energy goes everywhere. And as a consequence, it just feels like it extends. People that, the productive side, Elon, Jobs. I mean, you kind of fill in the blank here. You're a great example of this. Focused. And it's in that focus that time stands still. I mean, with that focus, I've got all the time in the world with that kind of focus.
And why do we put emotional value? Like, here's what, that for me, I think set me to a different paradigm, was that if I went, jogging this morning and then did office hours at 5:15 a.m. and then go to the next thing and go to the next thing, somehow people put a judgment or condition that I'm living a more difficult life than if they sit in bed and watch TikTok for 3 hours till 8 a.m. and then, sit around. Why do we put this judgment on what the activities are?
The judgment comes. Okay, you're opening up a whole interesting rabbit.
Hey, we got time. We got time, my friend. I've been waiting for some one-on-one. Well, two-on-one. We'll let Mikey pitch in here.
The judgment comes in because the ego gets in the way. I mean, that's the simplest way I can explain it. And the structure that you've got, the structure that I've got in my life, particularly my morning routine and my evening routines, all of that's predicated on my soul wanting to be productive. I mean, and I mean the soul, not again in a religious sense, but there's this creativity that wants to be expressed. And I'm the vehicle for that creativity. And I mean, I don't have it on my desk right now, but if I had a coffee and I just poured it on my desk, it would have no utility. I mean, I'd have to mop it up, and it would take, I'd be frustrated and all that kind of stuff. But if I put it in a mug, now the mug has got constraints, it's got form, it's got structure to it. Now I have utility with that coffee. I can actually work with it. And it's a poor metaphor, but that's essentially what a morning structure does, and it's what an evening structure does. It's what structure provides. And those that judge it, again, the ego gets in the way. I don't care what people think about my routine. I mean, my ego is absolutely not attached to other people's opinion of my routine.
How long did it take you in life to not care as much? We all care a little bit, right? We all have, because we all have an ego. You can't extract the primary fears that we have, and we just minimize the triggers and allow them to take over for minutes and moments as we get older. But how old were you when you were, able to transcend this kind of idea of not caring what other people think. 'Cause I think it's a huge problem, and it's worse for the generation that's growing up now than it was for our generation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the social media has just amplified that, I think, in a lot of ways. The short answer to your question is I still wrestle with it. I mean, yeah, into that point. I mean, yeah, I live in a corporeal body and in a time-space function that's got all kinds of stuff, and my ego is necessary in order to navigate that. So, and we're social beings. So that reciprocity that it comes with being social, by implication, says I care about what you think. Now, just because I care about what you think doesn't mean I have to be attached to it. And that's, I think, where the people kind of get trapped, is they get attached to thinking that your opinion matters to my life.
Right.
Yeah, Blaine, good morning. So I absolutely agree. And I think that's, that attachment is ingrained in our DNA, right? You look back to stories like the Scarlet Letter and things. We're social creatures and we rely on each other to survive, right? That's part of our survival mechanism. And if we're ostracized by the group, then all of a sudden that's a threat to our survival. So is it something, what's the moment? What's the aha moment to get past that, to say, aha, I can survive on my own, to get away from that fear so that you can start stepping into that as opposed to away from it?
Boy, that's a great question. I mean, I can identify when it happened for me.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, this goes back a whole bunch of years, and I'll date myself if I tell you what year it went back to. But I remember, and I was doing work in the personal development arena. This is back in the 1970s, and one of the folks that was senior in the organization I was with had some judgments about the way that I was showing up. And what was interesting around that, there was a bit of a paradox, because the whole programmatic structure that we were teaching had to do with self-reliance, just kind of being your own person, and I am responsible for my life. And so I was able to talk the talk, but there was a point where things had just stacked. And I woke up one morning and I was just pissed. It kind of like, the window comes up and I stick my head out of the window and you can't do this to me anymore, sort of a thing. And I forget what movie that was out of, but there was just this snap. And I went in and I just called bullshit. And I said, look, this is the way I'm going to do it. And I had to get to a point where I was not attached to the outcome. And that was the key. I had to let go of my need to be included in order to be included.
And for me, there's like three things when you say that come to mind, is my transcendence of giving a crap about the way I felt when someone said something. Because it's not that I don't care about what they say. And so when I learned that my first step is to listen to everyone, right? Listen to them. My second is to understand them. Yeah. And the third one is to pray for their happiness and learn a lesson. So if you listen, understand, and then learn the lesson, then that allows you to emotionally detach from the need to be offended, resentful, guilty, separate, inferior, superior, angry, frustrated, whatever it is. Because what happens is I think people get confused that I'm supposed to care about Blaine. But everyone's taught me I got to care about Blaine, and Blaine should care about me. So since then I go ahead and I'm vulnerable and I care about you, then anything that you say that is not aligned with my belief of self then becomes separate. Yeah. Instead of it's part of. And I just want to point out, because I got Rob commenting in here, my boy, you got to give a big shout out to the nobullcon.com. That's where we're at today. That's Blaine. We wish you were here. We wish you were here as well, but please join us. We got Gary B and myself. My first live speak, so I cannot have a better speaking partner than the great Gary B in the entrepreneur space, especially. And so we pinned it up there for everyone. To that end, did you have a quick question or no?
No, I didn't have a question. Go ahead. My question was going back to what we were talking about, Blaine, with regard to time. Is what does that transition look like? Because you talk about time, you look, like Dave said with Sadhguru, one of my favorites, talking about how the length of a life. And it's different, right? It's different if you're doing what you're passionate about or you're serving a life sentence in prison. So it's relative. How do we change that relativity? Where do we go inside in order to go from, man, life is difficult to life is grand? Is it finding that purpose and following the bliss?
I think that's honestly part of it. For me, and that's, I can speculate on other people's experience, but I just kind of come back to mine.
I have a quote. That's a great quote. I just can speculate on other people's experience. And then also, why are other people offended by the experience I'm having? Right? That goes along with what you're doing, right?
That's it, exactly. What? Honestly, Mike, I think it comes back to that focus, and the focus has to be on what's my spirit being called to do? What am I? It's this thing that I call me being called to do by my spirit. And then, if I'm engaged in it, I'll go back to grade school, watching the clock in class. It's going, God, will 3 o'clock ever get here? Yeah, we just tick, 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 tick. And it's drugged forever. But then there was times when in recess, I'll just kind of take it back to the sandbox, in recess. Yeah, that 15 or 20 minutes or whatever it was, it's kind of like, God, we just got out here because I was engaged, I was participating, I was fully involved, sitting in my desk watching the clock, while I'm looking at some abstractions on paper, an algebraic equation. Is kind of like, this sucks. Will this ever get over? That kind of a thing comes into play. So I want to choose where I put myself. And I don't mean that physically. I mean that intellectually, I mean that spiritually, and I mean that emotionally as well as energetically. I'm in charge. I get to choose where I put myself. And then if it's engaging, time stops. It truly does. I've got all the time in the world at that point.
And transitioning from that too, we both are on the board of the Unstoppable Foundation. Mm-hmm. Cynthia Kersey is very close to both of us, closer to you. I'm
married to
her. And we are doing a celebration. And I, was looking back to learn, as I always say, the only reason to look back is to learn. It's absolutely not to stumble over the roadblocks. But there were roadblocks as COVID hit for a foundation that was building communities around the world, specifically, in the Massey in Kenya. And here we are a year later in a better position, a better place, in a better situation. And we're having a celebration with like extraordinary world thought leaders and the 3 tenors and everybody. And in fact, Maddie, if you can put up the website so people can join us at the celebration, that'd be great too. It's Unstoppable. Help me out. Cynthia's going to kill me.
Foundation.
Yeah, you're just as good as me, buddy. See?
Yeah, unstoppablefoundation.org, but the celebration website, I think, is Unstoppable Celebration.
Yeah, unstoppablecelebration.org, right?
.org, yeah.
All right, good. So my point is, it's not just business, right? We have the thoughts of others. Nobody had any personal gain to save the foundation and to continue the efforts to provide sustainable life in an area that's in great need of it in a very difficult time. And how many meals did we give out?
Over 1 million.
Over 1 million, yeah. So that had a significant impact. Last question, and then we'll bring John on. What was, in your opinion, the mindset? Because I think this is a classic example of what people can see or don't see, because there's so many foundations that went down the tubes over the last 12 months. And yet, here we thrive in over 1 million meals alone, let alone all the other things, the education and scholarships and things that continue.
All that stuff.
Yeah. What was the mindset of the collective, over the last year to get us to that position?
2 things I think come to play with that. One was caring, just the mindset of care. We can't abandon. We've got stuff going on here, and it was an and. We can't abandon those kids. So because that mindset of connectivity, I am connected to them. They, in a metaphysical sense, they are me. And if I abandon them, I'm abandoning a part of me. So that mindset really was important. And the other part of it, I think, is just the mindset of making it, this is Cynthia's masterful at this. Giving for her is an opportunity for people to actually connect with themselves, to connect with the best parts of themselves. So our donor base actually, there was no attrition. We didn't lose donors. We didn't lose the monetary compensation that the donors would provide. And as a consequence of that, we were able to fund this Million Meal Project. We were able to continue to do some of the things. So those two mindsets, one is we are connected, we care. And the other one is, and that translated into the donors, but giving is, and it's not just an altruistic thing. Givers get in a very pragmatic way. So you benefit by giving. Yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing too that I thought was interesting is that any challenge that arose, instead of taking the mindset onto the challenge, we or the board went and derived, that's not a problem. We'll figure that out, right? We'll figure it out. And it's a Bob Proctor-esque thing about, so much energy is wasted about worrying and wishing for what you don't want and focusing on the problem instead of just saying, how is it, I remember telling Cynthia about one issue that arose. I said, take a deep breath, because how is it that you could ever think that between, all these amazing people that we couldn't figure out how to make this work, whether it was education or feeding or healthcare or financial literacy or scholarships or whatever it was, there's a will,
there's a way.
And what that means to me is where there's a will, we can clear the interference to give way to what already exists, a better place, a better situation. Where there's a will, there's a way.
That the obstacle becomes the way to the obstacle is the catalyst for innovation. And I call it a creative constraint. Yeah, I mean, it really is a creative constraint. All of a sudden there's a bottleneck. Okay, now that requires creativity. That requires imagination. Yeah. I don't want to wish it away. I want to be able to use it. How can I use this thing? And that's a leadership mindset.
Absolutely. Well, we have John waiting in the wings. Matt, is he ready? Blaine, thank you so much, man. This has been an amazing session. We got to do, like I always tell Blaine, we got to do this more often. I got to keep some time in the beginning. Nobody else wants to wake up this early. Let's just milk the cow for all his genius. So, awesome. Well, speaking of geniuses, we got another one coming on here, an expression of God. John, founder and CEO of the Value Builder System. I'm a huge proponent of value. I believe the secret to all business is to be able to articulate the quantifiable value to exceed that which we ask for. And it's all value-based. And you obviously feel the same way, the art of selling your business in the context of value. John, welcome to Office Hours.
Thanks for having me. Good to be with you.
Great to have you. Well, let's start with what I love is the Value Builder System. What is that based on?
Yeah, look, it's 8 things that drive the value of your company. And we did a bunch of quantitative market research years ago. We discovered that acquirers care about things that most entrepreneurs don't always think about. Things like, we talk about revenue and profit. That's the gestalt, like the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies. But acquirers actually have a different set of criteria they look at that makes them attractive to makes you attractive to an acquirer. So it's things like recurring revenue, how much dependence the company has on a key customer or supplier or employee. That's what we call the Switzerland structure. So there's these 8 things that effectively drive up the value of your company. And they're things that most entrepreneurs don't always think about, but can have a profound impact on the value of their company.
Good morning, John. I have a question for you. I love that. And, it brings me back to in my days as a trial lawyer, before we would try cases, we would do something called mock trials, and we would put juries into rooms, right? And we would pitch the case to them, and inevitably they would come back with things. Now, we've been prepping the case for years, and they would inevitably come back with things that we never ever saw, never ever considered, and said, thank goodness we went over this, because now going into the real jury trial, we can identify these things. And I think that's critical. What's the most common misconception that entrepreneurs have when they're going to sell their business? And that acquirer wouldn't be, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, probably that it's worth more than they think it is. So, and I learned this the hard way.
Right.
About 20 years ago, I used to run a quantitative market research business. We had great clients. We worked with Bank of America and Microsoft and all these fancy clients. We had, 30 employees, maybe 5 or 6 million in revenue, 20 or 30% profit margins. We were like, in my mind, a great company. And I went to see an M&A guy and I said, what do you think it's worth? And he said, well, let me ask you a couple questions. You're in research. So who does the research? And he's like, I'm like, well, I'm involved in the research. He says, okay, well, who does the selling? And I'm like, we're selling to Bank of America, but I'm involved in some of the selling, of course. And he says, all right, so you do the selling, you do the research. There's nothing to sell here. I can't sell your company. And I walked into that meeting thinking I was sitting on a gold mine, right? Here I am with profits and great clients. And, someone's going to buy my client list. And here's this M&A guy saying it's worthless because it's dependent on you. And I think that's the biggest mistake we make as entrepreneurs is we build these kingdoms that really rely on us. And the problem is they're not worth anything to someone without you. And so, that journey kicked off for me this sort of, or that meeting kicked off this sort of journey where I just tried to understand, well, if what I built wasn't valuable, what would be valuable? And that company ultimately got acquired by a publicly traded business, but it wasn't until we switched to a subscription model. And I personally got out of the selling. You did all the things that we talk about a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, if I'm the center of the system, there you go. It's kind of like, if I'm a cog in the machine of the organization, and I'm an integral cog, this is kind of back to our earlier conversation, Dave. If my ego says, "Hey, I built this thing. I'm the owner of this thing. I'm the chief cook and bottle washer in this thing," and all of a sudden, because I am the chief cook and bottle washer, if I get sick or if I'm gone, this thing it's building a house of cards. So
that's right.
This is kind of going back to at a personal level. I build practices for myself that sustain me. Even if I just don't want to show up, the practices sustain me. And what I'm hearing you say, you've got 8 principles with this thing. So you're building a practice. You're building a container that will sustain itself absent the founder.
That's right. And I remember, again, this goes back probably 25 years. I'm embarrassed to tell you, but do you remember Nextel, the push-to-talk technology in the old days? That's how we used to, And I was moderating a focus group, and an owner of, I can't remember if it was a plumbing company or construction company, but sort of a blue collar guy. And I said, so tell me about how you communicate with your team. And he's like, it's super easy. I just use this. And he pointed out his Nextel, and he said, supplier needs a quote or, approval. I just, customer needs something, my employees need something. And what he was describing is he was the hub in a hub and spoke model, right? Everything would come in and out of him, and he was almost proud of it. This is super efficient, right? This is incredibly efficient communication because I can manage it all. Yet what, obviously now 30 years on, we know what he was describing is this hub and spoke system. And if you've ever been at, O'Hare Airport in a snowstorm and you realize that O'Hare is a hub, and if that shuts down, then all of the flights that rely on it, fail as well. So that's the kind of overarching sort of philosophy of everything that we do is how do you create this company that won't, doesn't rely on you.
Yeah.
That's why I bring on so many co-hosts to all of the different shows that I do. I can go on vacation. I can retire. I can get people smarter than me to make me look good. Put your name office hours with Dave Meltzer, and then let Blaine spew all the genius. And it was like, Dave Meltzer's a genius. This is amazing. But in all seriousness, you have one of the top 10 podcasts. Forbes has honored you as one of those as well. And I have a tremendous amount of content. And I've been a firm believer of this idea of being able to articulate quantitative value greater than what I'm asking for, including in M&A. I deal with a lot of coaching in this area as well. But the difference of today compared to 10 years ago, John, is the perpetual nature of a business, the amplification of a business. And a lot of people, it's even more tempting, to have the playbook be all David Meltzer, or the office hours be all David Meltzer, or 2-minute drill be all Dave Meltzer, and then Dave Meltzer gets sick with COVID, and you can lose an audience really quickly.
Yeah.
And yet, how do we teach people the perpetual nature of content? Meaning, yes, you can put it up there, but you have to set your business up so that it actually is able to be amplified when you're gone, whether it's intermittently or permanently, and leaving it to your kids, for example. And I'll give you a good example of someone that was stuck in the transition. I think Dr. Wayne Dyer is one of the greatest world thought leaders ever to be on this earth. I think his content is extraordinary. I research every single day, and that's one of the things, like Napoleon Hill, that I read every day. But he got caught in this transition between CD and online, and he hasn't perpetually created a legacy of his material, and it's dissipating and dissolving because his 8 kids or 7 kids weren't given the empowerment to monetize and to transcend.
Yeah. And I think you're right. There's this cultural ethos right now, which is all about how many followers you have, how many fans do you have, how many retweets you got. And look, I think it's a very egocentric model. It feeds our ego to see something liked and see something perpetuated. And we all got to be personal brands. I think it's all garbage. I honestly believe it's the worst way to build a business. If you set yourself up as a personality, as the aficionado, as the spokesperson, I think it is a huge disservice to your company. I mean, for example, if you go to our blog at valuebuilder.com, it's not me writing the blog, and that's a distinct decision because I don't want Value Builder to be dependent on me. What I think information product sellers and the entire information industry does itself a huge disservice, as you point out, that creating these personalities is a huge failing. What I think you've really got to do if you're in that space or in any business, frankly, is to think recurring revenue. How do we create, instead of the product launch philosophy, which is, hey, we had a 100K product launch, which is what all information marketers sort of talk about, is that they're proud of their product launch. It's, I won't say an expletive. What I would say is what you really want is recurring revenue, because recurring revenue perpetuates without you. It's what happens when you sleep, and that's what you want. And so subscription models, recurring revenues, contracts. I mean, and a lot of people, when they hear that, they're like, oh, but I'm not an information marketer. I can't figure out how to create a subscription. I would turn them to look at the model of H. Bloom. H. Bloom is in the business of selling flowers. And if you've ever thought of a business that you could never create a recurring model, it's flowers, right? We buy them at Mother's Day, Valentine's Day. Yet H. Bloom said, who buys flowers regularly? And it turns out hotels buy flowers regularly because they want to give that boutique sort of image. Instead of setting up and selling to everybody who wants to buy flowers, they said, all we're going to do as a company is sell a subscription to flowers to hotels. The average lifetime value of an H. Bloom subscriber is more than $4,500. They make one sale. They get $4,500 worth of revenue. The average transaction in a flower store is $50. H. Bloom throws out 2% of its inventory every single month because of spoilage. The average flower store throws out 60% of its inventory because they don't know how many people are going to come in and buy. I like the H. Bloom story because I think it is emblematic or illustrative of the fact that no matter what industry you're in, you can go from a transactional business model to a recurring business model. And it's the secret, I think, to creating a business that kind of can perpetuate beyond you personally.
There's entrepreneurs get it, and I'm going to just kind of echo what you're saying here in one sense, John. The egocentric idea of I'm the founder, I'm the entrepreneur, I'm going to start this thing, and now I become the hub and the whole thing.
Yeah,
and it's predicated on a definition of success that is self-oriented. I am going to be successful, and because the I is in front of everything, I become the hub. A long time ago, I defined sustainable success in a different way, and it had to do with developing the capacity to continuously start over.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And that lends itself to sustainable success. And what I'm hearing you say with recurring, with this whole subscription model, recurring revenue, basically what you're doing is you're continuously starting over in one sense. I bought, my wife some flowers. And actually I think it was through H. Bloom. I'm not sure who it was through, but they gave me an option of a monthly subscription. And I thought, now that's bloody brilliant.
Right.
And so I said, yes, and Signed up for 3 months.
Are you making us look bad, bro?
Yeah.
Come on, Blaine. You kill me. My wife watches.
Dave's like,
You guys, you gotta be kidding me. Anyway, hey, I gotta cut you off because I have Joanna waiting in the wings. I will say one thing on the personal branding side, John. Animation is one of the solutions. If you are going to personal brand, that's why The Simpsons is the longest running TV show.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
So animation allows you to, as you build your brand, create an animation or an avatar of yourself that has infinity as its lifetime. Just as a suggestion, if you deal with anyone that can combine the personal brand, like a Papa John I consulted with and gave him the idea. And it also dehumanizes you so that if you do dumb stuff like Papa John, that you can separate yourself from it because there's just a cartoon character there.
It's such a good point.
I love your business. The Art of Selling Your Business is your new book. Check it out. It's everywhere. The Value Builder System. I'm going to go and study the 8 different value-based indicators there. And I want to definitely come on your podcast as well. We should do a little swap, do some more content together, get Blaine on there. We'd love to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks guys. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you. John Warrillow, gosh, I'm a name butcher, CEO of the Value Builder System. All right, we got a big cleanup hitter, Blaine.
Who's this? Tell me.
Dr. Joanna Massey. I'm not going to butcher her name. She is president and CEO of JDMA Inc. And she's at www.jdmainc.com. That's easy enough. Give us a little bit of background, Doctor, on you're a doctor of psychology, on your company, and then I know you have a question for these two geniuses and myself.
I actually have 2 questions I'm going to try to sneak in, and it's great
Oh, that's cool.
The quick explanation of what I do is that I make companies and their executives famous, and I help keep them from becoming infamous. Basically, I spent my career running communications departments at publicly held companies, and now I consult. So if you need to rent a chief communications officer and you don't want to hire one full-time, call me. But as you mentioned, I also have a PhD in psychology, and I advise on how people can use neuroscience to their advantage, because knowing how people react to stress, change, conflict makes you better at communicating. And I have a couple of books about that. One's called Communicating During a Crisis. The other's called Culture Shock. It talks about all the different generations in the workplace. And I have a third one coming out called The Queen of Pivoting, How to Make a Successful Career Change. They're all self-help books with business titles because I really wanted my colleagues to read them.
Awesome. Well, Papa John was a perfect transition into what you do. So I'll give you 2 questions. We'll go rapid fire, hot seat coaching, Blaine and Mike. All right?
Ready.
All right. You're up, Doc.
All right. So as I said, I'm the queen of pivoting. My social media bios have said that for years. I'm putting out a book based on it, but I hear you're the king of pivoting. So Her Majesty would like to inquire of His Majesty, what do you believe the key is to making a successful career pivot?
Well, first of all, it's understanding that we have been raised on a culture of stability. Somehow, our whole culture is dependent on stability when it should be dependent on change. And so when we look and change and shift the paradigm to understand that there's always change, but unfortunately, the only one that likes change is a wet baby. And we need to like change. So how do we do that? The key to pivoting is truly the key to acceleration, growth, and learning, which is to understand that mistakes, failures, and pain are simply turn signals. Those are the turn signals. You can call it pivoting. For me, when I see failures, mistakes, and pain in my life, I know there's an indication that I have somewhere better to be. It's an invitation to me. And it's an invitation to a better place, a better situation, or to make myself better. And all I have to do that is to learn a lesson. Literally, I have to look and say, how can I expand and grow? Oh, I can learn. Oh, beautiful. This is so, and the bigger the mistake, the bigger the problem, and the bigger the indicator, then the bigger the door or the invitation is. I'm now invited to the White House or to the UN to speak or whatever. When, I lost $100 million, it was my first opportunity to understand the size, scope, and scale of the invitations that I've been given in my life. So I think understanding, one, that our normal, when are we going to get back to the normal? Our normal is change. So we're already in the normal. It's just maybe an accelerated to everybody, and everyone is now sharing the same exact change. We're questioning our human existence, which is beautiful, because this is a huge invitation for our conscious, our collective conscious, to get to a better place, a better situation for me. Mikey?
Amazing. How do you follow that? Good morning. Look, for me specifically, and I think I'm an example of it, it's, looking for a successful career pivot. It starts with a very clear definition of success, or what being successful means. And for people, I think that requires them to do some very radical self-introspection, reflection on figuring out what it really is that they want out of life. And like Dave talks about all of the time, very often we find ourselves in careers or jobs or doing different things that may not necessarily align with who we are as human beings. As we've gone into them because our parents have told us that being a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever else is what success is, and all of that's going to make you happy. It's identifying what success means to you. If it's a ton of money, great. If it's being content and living a peaceful and tranquil life, great. If it's the teacher that's doing a great job at what she's doing and is enjoying that, that's true success. So it's identifying what success means, and then just making sure the rudder is pointed in that direction. So that's where you go.
I'm going to jump in.
You go first, Blaine. You go first on the next question.
Okay. Here's the problem with change. And the problem with change is that people think that change is the problem.
Right.
Yep. It's the disruption to relationships that change causes. That's the problem. And a successful pivot requires redefining the relationships that are in play. And one of the key relationships has to do with identity, my personal identity. There's two questions that I think that are always almost TSR questions. If I go back to a DOS system of computers, a TSR program, terminal stay resident. It comes in when the computer's turned on, it boots up, it just kind of lays there. The TSR program that's in play around relationship has to do with two questions: who am I and where do I belong? And those are the two relationships that get disrupted when fundamental change is afoot. And a career pivot will call into question, who am I? It will call into question, where do I belong? And unless I can get those questions answered well, I'm going to end up not pivoting. I'm going to end up going in circles. Yeah. And there we go.
Right. Second question, rapid answer from all three of us.
Okay, so but by the way, what I heard there was change is inevitable, embrace change, fail fast, and learn from the failure. Good advice. Okay, leadership. In both of my books, Culture Shock, Communicating During a Crisis, I talk about the changes that these younger generations are bringing. And one of the big adjustments is in how leaders have to operate within a company, because today with millennials and Gen Z, it's not enough. Like, they want companies to take a stand on the environment, on anti-racism, on gun control, on any number of things that companies were like, no, don't want to have an opinion. So I now have to advise these CEOs on how to walk that tightrope and how to literally walk their talk. And I'd love to know how you would advise CEOs in this era to have that balancing act so that they can take that stand, but at the same time not offend so many people that they're losing customers.
Two things come into play here. One has to do with how you define leadership. And most of these CEOs are going to have an archaic model of leadership, and it's usually going to be a command and control structure in some way, shape, or form. That's kind of inherited. Redefining what leadership is, and in the work that I do, it's co-creating, two pieces here: co-creating coordinated movement. Co-creating coordinated movement. If I'm co-creating, by definition, I'm bringing you into the mix here. And part of that, the way that co-creation occurs, is I'm not concerned with how do I get you to come along with me. Partly what my question is how do I go to you and find out what you need in order to come along? How do I go along with you? That co-creation, it moves me out of my ego space and says, we're in this together, and you're important here. And then we look at the coordinated movement, and that's, elegance comes into play. How do I do what I do without unintended consequences?
That's elegance. 100%, Blaine. And that's exactly it. Going back to, I think it was Eisenhower who had a big piece of chain, 6-foot piece of chain on his desk, right? And if you push it one way, it goes this way. But if you take it walk away, then all of the links follow you the right way. And it's identifying that you are the source of that and going in the right direction for you and your company. You're going to get everyone to follow without abstracting, without offending anyone, as long as you're aware of that consciousness of what's going on socially.
Yeah. And for me, there's two things that come to mind. One is obviously with my mentor over there, related to and directly aligned with, which is a leader's an intelligent follower. And that creates that collaboration and coordination. So a leader is an intelligent follower, never more important today. And then secondly, I think it's on the branding side. As a company, you need to find your frequency. And if you've aligned as an intelligent follower, your employees with the values of the company, then their expectation will be managed by the communication that's set forth by the company. See, people are looking at the end results and they're not looking at why has this problem or separation occurred. It's because you haven't been an intelligent follower and you haven't been a coach and a mentor, meaning you haven't brought the best out of your employees and you haven't given them your best, which is the collaboration. And by doing so, they already know the communication, whether it's for social justice or for the environment. And the companies that do that well, the Toms of the world, where it's a collective conscious, there is no separation. The companies that do not do that well, then they have a mixed batch of expectations, which then allow the few to determine the interference that's created internally and externally with the communication. But Doctor, I'm sure you're the expert at that. It is unfortunate, but we are going to have to let you go. I hope we answered your questions wisely.
That was excellent. Thank you. Very interesting. Great
Awesome.
to see you.
Come back and visit us.
Would love to.
All right. You're awesome. Dr. Joanna Massey. I did not butcher her name. Her website is posted right there. Thank you so much. JDMAinc.com. All right, fellas, we did it. Blaine, I want to thank you especially for your mentorship today. Just great warm up to an incredible set of guests. We'll start with you, Blaine. What's your takeaway for the day?
The takeaway, I'm going to come back to relationship. I mean, it always comes back for me to the quality and nature. Do I nurture my relationships? And if we look at just our conversation, my relationship with time. Do I nurture? I mean, am I aware of just kind of how that's playing out? My relationship with my business. Am I the hub or the spoke? I mean, what's the relationship here? And Joanne's questions around leadership. It's all leadership is a relationship sport. It fundamentally is. And so I think our conversation today has been organized around just the efficacy and the power of really paying attention to relationship.
Yeah, for me, Blaine, I absolutely agree. For me, it's the power and the importance of reflection, right? Because that reflection, whether it's through just taking some quiet time or meditation or whatever it is that allows you to do that, gives us that ability, like Dave said, to find your frequency, or like you said, to build co-creative relationships and other relationships. I like to use the idea of a pond. When you look down at a pond, and you could see, and it's very, very still, like your mind, like a quiet mind, you could see the reflection of what's going on in your life or business very clearly. Just throw a pebble into it and the ripples occur and it's all disrupted. So the power and importance of reflection by quieting your mind so you can be better at life and business.
That's awesome. Both of you are incredible. For me, it's value and the relationship of value with time and emotion, right? When you were talking about early on miserable versus productive, and we were talking about value builder and branding, and then with Joanna as well, the value as a leader, the value as well as pivoting, where is the relationship between value, time, and emotion? But in the end, you need to have a set, quantifiable value system. It has to be a daily activity to take inventory of, to get the alignment, to take action and prepare for adjustment, those pivots as they talk about. So for me, the big takeaway for the day was understanding the relationship of value to time and emotion. Unfortunately, we're out of time for this episode of Office Hours. Emotionally, it makes me full of love and passion and purpose, just being able to be inspired by both of you. And I am also extremely grateful because I hope everyone knows that, these fine gentlemen wake up really early to assist everyone out there by sharing their wisdom, their expression of God, defined as genius. Blaine, thank you so much. Learn.blainebartlett.com/LMN Mindset Mastermind. If you haven't participated, you're missing out. create a void for the universe to fill by working with Blaine. Take it from me. I am where I am at because I have a mentor like Blaine. Thank you so much, Blaine. Mr. Mikey Brown, you can sit here while I give my final thoughts. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Blaine.
Good to see you. Have a great session, guys.
Don't forget Unstoppable unstoppablecelebration.org. Unstoppablecelebration.org. Join us, me and Blaine, the tenors, world thought leaders. Kevin Harrington and I are doing a VIP thing. We got Bob Proctor, Mary Morrissey. There's amazing people all involved with Unstoppable. The greatest thought leaders in the world. Jack Canfield. They're all my faves. Anyway, all right. Let me finish up real quickly. I am at thenobullcon.com. I am here. Gary V and I are going to help small businesses, entrepreneurs with no BS. That's what the conference is about. Just straight shooting, transparent, vulnerability, no standing in front of cars you don't own, no dressing up in suits that are more expensive than your businesses. Just straight shoot, answering questions, helping people here in Syracuse. And guess what? I brought 73-degree weather here. So they're going to invite me back. I promise you that. So not bad. We got Friday training on time management. So please join me on Fridays. Download the playbook if you missed anything. Share it with everybody, the playbook. It's on every single platform featured there. Spotify, iTunes, Google, Entrepreneur. It's featured everywhere. Check it out. And then finally, most importantly, be kind to your future self and do good deeds. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome to Office Hours. I'm Dave Meltzer, author, speaker, entrepreneur. Office Hours is a show with entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. And we're going to dive deep into the mindset of what it takes to be an entrepreneur, how to start, how to scale, and how to exit. We're going to talk to the celebrities, the athletes, the entertainers, the billionaires, all who want to be or are entrepreneurs. And we're going to find out what it takes to have that desire that you must be what you can be, to make a lot of money, help a lot of people, and have a lot of fun. And we're going to get inside the mindset of the entrepreneur.
You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together.
You know, we can handle hard, but it's long that bothers us. I really encourage every entrepreneur to think hard and smart, but I really give a lot of weight to an entrepreneur that works long.
I don't want to be exclusive. I don't want to create a product that's only for one person. I want it to be for everyone.
I think the beauty of a values-based approach to business is that it sets a compass in place that you can follow, whether you're dealing with a COVID, a pandemic, an economy, social unrest, or a roaring economy.
The best investment you have to make is to bet on yourself. And that's exactly what you're saying. And that's emotionally, that could be monetarily, that could be time. There's so many different, that could be giving.
The one consistent thing about them and everybody here is that just like every good house, they've got a strong foundation of core values and work ethic, right? Every last one of them spoke about the things that shaped them, and they still implement those things no matter when they jump from here to here to here, they're still doing the same things that got them to the first place.
I still remember when we bought YouTube, and it seemed like we're going to pay billions of dollars for this company that has no revenue and not even a plan to get revenue. But now it's a key part of the Alphabet strategy.
Right, a rising tide lifts all ships, and that's what's happening here. You create that elevated frequency, that elevated energy that everyone benefits from.
If you appreciate what we all are the same, it allows us to appreciate how different we are. And I say appreciate the differences. And I think that separation that exists today is something that we all need to work on, because together we'll go far. Come join me inside the greatest minds of entrepreneurship here on Office Hours.